Hey, congratulations on your new film, Do Not Disturb.
Thank you.
I know it's going to be one certain interesting weekend between your film, Do Not Disturb, and Eli Roth's Thanksgiving. I don't know which is more gorier and feastful for the holidays.
I'm sure his is, but I do the best I can with the budget I'm given. So,
Well, you did pretty well and pretty convincingly, but let's hear it first is where did the original idea came from for Do Not Disturb?
Do Not Disturb started with me just randomly writing down honeymoon couple develops cannibal sex fetish on a piece of paper, and then that sort of processed in my brain, and sort of like I wrote out a version of that pretty quickly. That was a little more tropey, a little more leaned into the B horror aspects of it a little more. And as I worked on it, I kind of drew inspiration from Altered States and Will Friedkin's Bug, and really focused sort of on the relationship story as the spine of the film, really using Will Friedkin's Bug as that guide of a couple stuck in a hotel room together and going through life-changing things together. Um, and then from there, I just sort of worked on it and came up with the metaphor of using cannibalism as a metaphor for how we eat each other alive emotionally in bad relationships, or in good relationships too, I suppose, but primarily in bad relationships. Um, yeah, and then from there, it just sort of worked and came together pretty quickly after that. Yeah.
I like it. I like it where I'm sitting here going metaphor. All there. Sex and food all goes hand in hand together in any type of relationship.
Yeah.
So, so where did you want? How did you want to approach something like this? Because it seems such a simple concept, and you kept it as a small cast and crew for yourself.
Yeah. I mean, for me, it's always the biggest thing is keeping it simple, not overcomplicating anything. And for me, approaching this one primarily as a relationship story. I mean, I look at movies like Blue Valentine about a relationship falling apart, and it's kind of similar. I just add cannibalism and some gore to it. But like using those things are fun, and I love those things. And I'm kind of a genre filmmaker, so it's where I go to naturally. Um, but for me, it was always that relationship as the spine of the story, and building that relationship as almost mundane to open. Um, and sort of drawing on conversations that we've all sort of had and building off of that so that the relationship and the characters are what carry us through the rest of the story.
So how did you want to cast your two main leads with Kimberly and how did you have them develop their chemistry? Their own way?
Well, um they did that together more. I mean, I know I've known Rogan. I met both of them a long time ago, and we it's interesting. Rogan I met at the premiere of my first film, The Sublet. He came over and chatted with me. We talked for about 10 minutes, and then I think 3 or 4 years went by and we never talked at all. He was there pitching a movie that I thought was quite interesting. And then during the pandemic, he reached out to me on Instagram, and we sort of became text friends, if that's a thing, because he lives, on the other side of the continent. And then while I was casting, I just couldn't find an actor, and he is an actor. And I said, well, why don't you do it? And it just sort of worked. And he's just sort of like bought into that character really well. And he's got personal traits that sort of feed that character that he can amplify or change or modify a bit and really sell it. With Kim, same thing. Like I think in 20, I don't know, it would have been 2014, somewhere around there. We were at a wrap party for another film that neither of us were involved in. And both of us sort of end of the night. I remember I was broke, and I was trying to figure out how I was going to get another drink in me. And I wandered to the bar, and at the same time, she and I wandered. She didn't say anything to me. And we just looked at each other and she's like, "Do you want a shot?" And I said, "Sure." And then she bought me a shot of Jameson, and we just cheersed, and we didn't even say goodbye. I think I said thanks, and I don't think she acknowledged it, and she just walked away. And then we didn't talk for about 5 years. And then we got on the phone and talked for probably 4 or 5 hours on that first conversation. We just talked about relationships and life and different things. And I knew that she sort of understood the character, or even if she didn't understand it exactly how it was in my head, her interpretation of that character was going to work. I think we talked one more time for about 3 hours prior to filming, and then she just showed up on set and we did it. We went and we didn't really overthink of it. She and I didn't overcomplicate it, overtalk it. It was just, I gave her the freedom to do what she wanted, and I liked what she did, and then she did it, and it felt good. And that's essentially most of our conversations on set were like, "How did that feel to you?" "I felt good." "Okay, let's move on." "All right, I don't know, I'd like another," and then we do it again. That was it. Which works great. I think that's really kind of what I learned on this one, is to stop thinking and just start feeling. Um, you can't think yourself into a good film, is a quote from someone, and I can't remember who, but I think it's Kubrick, but I'm not sure. You can't think a good film, but you feel it because you want the audience to feel it eventually. So
Well, Kubrick is a great director too. So
yeah, well, the great.
now, of course, the story purposely, you didn't really tell us where the location or what city or what country this is. I mean, it
Oh
really
no,
looks like Miami to me, but
no, there was a title at the beginning. When we first come in, before after the plane, I mean, when the plane lands, there is like my MIA and Miami Airport, whatever. But there's a title at the beginning. It says "some time ago in Miami."
oh.
I think, yeah, it's quick, but yeah, it's Miami. I live in Miami, and Miami seemed like the perfect place to set it. Miami's a fun city, and it has the reputation. It's an international city that also appeals to people. People want to see movies about Miami. People are interested in Miami. Um, it is a fun city to live in, and if you do ever go on Instagram, there's a only in Dade people, and I surprisingly have an amazing amount of content daily from bizarre happenings in Miami-Dade County. So they're quite interesting. So that Miami felt like a great place for it, and we just made it work. We actually shot up north in northern Canada for
Hmm.
tax credits. We shot the interior of the hotel up there, and then we shot the beaches down here. So.
Well, I guess Miami is a good setting as anywhere. Sometimes people go there to disappear, right?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, Miami's a weird. I mean, originally I'd written the first draft of the script was from Mexico, and that's where the peyote came from. But
So tell us about the hotel room that you commandeered in Canada. How long was that shoot? How long did you take to shoot in that one room hotel room?
we had 10 days in a hotel room, I think 9 or 10 days. It was not very much. We did like 12 to 14 page days, a lot, and we dove right in. There was no sort of easing into that shoot. We just went hard. Um, but we didn't have like crazy hours, I don't think. I know my cinematographer and I had crazy hours, but the rest, I think we didn't. I think most of our days were like 10 to 12-hour days. So it's a pretty easy shoot from that perspective. um, but yeah, we took over this hotel. The whole cast and crew lived and shot in this hotel. I put my parents up. They took my kids during the day, and my wife, because my wife produced the film. So she and I would go down to the ground floor. We shot on the ground floor so that we could put lights in the parking lot, because we didn't have the resources to sort of move lights up to a third or fourth story um location. So it was kind of fun. I mean, you're waking up at 6 in the morning and you just saunter down to the lobby and get free coffee and then walk on set, and you're there for the day. And it's eating becomes quite easy because there's a hall to eat at and there's a restaurant and the thing. And after you're done wrapping, me and the AD and the cinematographer would go for drinks at the hotel bar in the lobby and discuss the next day or stuff that happened that day or whatever. So it was fun, like it's always, I mean, being on a crew and making a movie is always a sort of fun adventure. But I think when you're stuck in one hotel in one location for 2 weeks, it begins to, I mean, it can go wrong with the wrong people, but you try to eliminate those people as soon as you can. So yeah, you get a bunch of good people together and it's quite fun. And it works.
It's funny. I could imagine you literally having that do not disturb sign on the door.
We did, yeah. It's a different one. We had that one, but yeah.
Well, good. Hopefully, you guys didn't mess up that hotel room too much in your own way.
Oh no, we had to replace the carpet. That's for sure, because the blood from, I think that, well, I mean, there's a lot of blood, but the problem was is the blood doesn't wash out of the carpet if you leave it sitting, so it was pretty evident. But the worst part was is we kept thinking we could clean it, so at the end of the day they would dump like buckets of soap water. And so last like few days of shooting, you'd be walking along and squishing. You couldn't put an actor on the floor because they'd be soaking wet it was it was dank, and it was just, you couldn't open a window, you couldn't run the air conditioner because we're shooting, so it's bad for sound. So it was not good. It's not a pleasant environment by the end, but we survived, and then the insurance claim covered the carpet, and you move on, and the hotel got a free carpet out of it, or a new carpet out of it. So
It's funny because you're trying to imagine your two characters trying to clean up this mess if you can't even clean it up
yeah,
yourself.
I've always thought it was funny because if you make a mess, I mean, Kim does a lot of cleaning in the movie within the frame, so it's fun that way.
Now let's talk cadavers. This
Yeah,
the that's the magic about doing horror movies is the prosthetics, the
yeah.
cadavers that you brought onto your production. Tell us about your production team creating these special effects and cadavers.
I worked with a guy named Carlos Henrique, and I mean, there was some great blood on set. They also built some great, like under the bed is a prosthetic body that was really creepy. There's some shots on, the actress name's Janet Porter, and if you find her Instagram, she's got a shot of the corpse and her head attached, because we built like a fake floor that she would poke her head and attach to it. But it was like, at the end of the day, Kiara and I, the makeup girl, she she and I had to carry the body from location to the makeup room, where I was lucky enough to just throw it into the tub. She had to soap it down. It's really creepy job. And then one day we were moving it, and it's drenched in blood. My hand slipped inside of it, and they're fake organs, but they're there. And you're just like, my hand was just, it was really gross. That was fun. Pumping the blood in the way I shoot. I tend to like shoot wides. I don't like close-ups on my effects. If I can make that effect as organic when within the frame as possible, I will. Which is hard because you've got actors that then have to have tubes taped to their backs and running prosthetics and this and that. But and it's difficult for them to move. But I always find when prosthetics are done badly, it's when they shoot in the close-ups or when the actor gets too stiff. And I mean, like, it's funny. I watched something the other day, and I think the person was being like disemboweled or something, and the person's not moving. And I'm like, because I mean, it's a prosthetic, but they're not moving. And I'm like, if people are ripping gut, you're struggling. Like, that is the part that I find really a challenge, is to like capture proper, because it's difficult to move everything and you don't want to miss the shot, because usually you get one chance at it. But so everyone's really careful and specific about it, and I kind of like to not be. I kind of like to feel natural and move. And I know when we did the throat rip, the actor Patrick, he reached up and covered the blood squirt, and the whole point you're doing a movie is to get a neck slash of the blood squirting, and he covered it with his hand. And I know Carlos and I kind of freaked out a bit, but we did a second take where he didn't reach up, and I ended up using the first take because it felt like a natural thing for a human. I mean, if you get your neck bitten open, you reach up to block the blood. I mean, that's what humans do. So that worked. And it also had the added effect of when he reached up, he reached up naturally, but then something in his brain clicked in of like, oh, I don't want to touch this prosthetic. So he stopped just shy, and the blood hit his hand and bounced everywhere, which it wouldn't have done have it just shot out. So I like it. It worked well. It also caused that, that push in at the end when she does this thing. That came about because his arm is broken and he reaches up with his broken arm. And I zoom in to hide the fact that he's using his broken arm. And then it ended up being a really cool kind of like 70s, those push-ins that they used to do when they'd be out of focus and really grainy 16 mil film. So I got that in my own way, and I was very happy with it.
It sounds so messy and fun for yourself.
Yeah, it's messy. It's messy and it's fun for everyone except for the people who have to clean it up. So
That's true. Or you just have Kim clean everything up again.
yeah, that only works so much. The actors union doesn't. You, there's only so many hours you can convince an actor to clean on camera.
Hey, I'm actually curious. When a production like this ends, what do you do with the prosthetic cadavers afterwards? Gets to keep them.
Carlos keeps most of them. I mean, you're essentially renting them. I know my guy down here. I use for Miami. I had a different blood and body guy, Antonio. He was really awesome. He just had, he's got a garage full of body parts. And I said, listen, I got an actress. She's got to go on a jet ski and she's got to dump body parts. And I need blood and I need body parts. And here's $200 or something like that. And he was like, yeah, take everything. He's like, the only thing is I need them back because he rents them out and uses them. And that's how they make their living. So we dumped them in the water, and he gave me this special blood. It was an oil-based blood that just sits on the surface. And so we didn't think it would, we thought dropping blood into the ocean would just go nowhere. And this stuff just sat. So much so that if you've ever been to Miami, there's a Rickenbacker Causeway. People were stopping traffic up there. The joggers and the cyclists were looking down because there was this massive pool of blood around our boat. And then Kim dropping body parts into the ocean. And the police drove right by. The police boat literally went by without doing anything. And then at the end of it, I couldn't afford to pay for these body parts. So I had to dive off the boat through the blood to the bottom of the ocean and collect all these limbs, which was terrifying in a lot of ways because like the childhood fear of Jaws came crawling back into my brain as you're like, because it was deep enough, shallow enough that myself, I'm not a bad swimmer, but I'm certainly not a strong swimmer. Is deep enough that by the time I got to the bottom to get those limbs, I was out of breath and had to get up. And so you're just, you're fighting to get up and you've got a severed arm in your hand and you're going through all this blood and then your brain is going, there's sharks are going to come kill you. But I survived. It was all just, childish fears.
I'm actually surprised that because that you actually went out in the ocean to actually do those scenes.
Yeah.
I figured it would probably be easier if you just CGI it, but why not do CGI? Why so practical?
I prefer practical as a filmmaker because well, I think it feels better. Also, I think CGI on a budget never works. I think that's not to say I'm one of these anti CGI people just because I've never used it. And I don't really plan on using it, but I will say that, things like the original Walking Dead, I thought they did a great job of combining practical effects and enhancing them with CGI where you don't really notice it. You just sort of feel it. I've seen that done other ways where there's so much blood. And when you get in the room with a guy on a computer whose job is to make things bloody, they make it bloody. And I think we have a tendency to overindulge and put it at the screen and do all this stuff that just takes you out of the film. And I think guys who do practical effects do the same thing. But when it's real, right? It's still coming out, whether it's coming out of your artery or coming out of a squirt bottle. They've figured out the pressure and it sort of feels real. I buy into it more. It takes me out of the story less. Also, I just think CGing an ocean and everything, I don't even think that would be cheaper. Like I paid some kid, I don't know, reasonable amount of money to go out in a boat and a couple jet skis, and we were there for 4 hours. It was pretty low key.
So
Um,
so you're telling me that the scene where they had the two jet skis and
well, that's stock
it formed
footage.
and formed a heart
Yeah,
that was the footage.
I literally was like looking for stock footage in Miami, and I popped a post like that one just popped in. I was like, okay, no matter what that clip costs me, I'm paying for it, and we're going to use it. And we added the blood to that one
Yeah.
digitally at the very end with AJ at Red Lab. We sort of paint. We weren't sure what it looks like, but it's there short enough that, I mean, if you look at it long enough, it's terrible, but it's it works and it has the effect because everyone seems to mention that shot. I think they put it in the trailer. It's been a fun shot.
Well,
But if you're really careful and you watch the film again, you'll notice that their jet skis are entirely different colors, as well as their their life jackets.
oh, you know, it's the symbolism of the relationship. That was the entire point of it, right?
Almost, yeah, exactly. And almost no one notices those little details on the first viewing. It's
Uh,
interesting. It's interesting what you can get away with and what you can't get away with, I think.
that's why movies magic.
Yeah.
So John, tell now at the beginning of this interview, you admit you're a genre director, but tell us about your love for horror, this particular genre.
Well, I mean, I grew up on horror. I grew up near Detroit, and Detroit had this Channel 50 horror. So I got to look this up because this is the second or third time that I've talked about this, and I don't exactly know what it was. I don't know if it was only in October, but I just remember on Saturdays there would be a horror double feature of generally movies that I don't know where else you would possibly see them. And there was like double creature feature or something like that. I don't know if this is the same for all American cities, but Detroit certainly pumped horror movies at midnight and even during the day. It was either Saturday or Sunday. My mom and I would watch them. And for whatever reason that ran. And then just, I remember, I mean, what I remember most about grocery shopping, I grew up in a small town, and there was, when you're checking out, there'd be a rack of VHS tapes.
Mhm.
And that cover for Fright Night. Because also I was an illustrator, and that cover for Fright Night, I mean, that might be one of the best VHS covers in the history of cinema, because and my mom would never let me rent it. I don't even know if I've ever seen Fright Night until I was like into my 40s, because my mom would never let me anywhere near it. But that cover, I would pick it up and stare at it every single time we went grocery shopping. So horror, I don't know. I mean, it's funny because I've even read a few reviews that debate whether or not Do Not Disturb is horror. Um, and I was aware of that as I wrote it. And there were versions of this film that were more horror, in terms of, I mean, in the current version, there's no blood for the first hour, really,
Yeah.
which is a dangerous thing to do. And I know there's a good percentage of people who won't like that. And that's fine. Um, but I always treated this as a drama, a relationship drama, more than a horror per se. I think the sublet of my first film was far more of a horror, as we traditionally understand it. But that's also really why I love genre films, and I'm going to put horror into the genre film category, because I think horror as we knew it is just broadened into this the new thing. And I think people are, you look at like Ari Aster, you look at like the new independent, the American independents especially, and even like European films too, but it's like there's no limit to how far we can push horror. And I think some people still have this thought that it's like paranormal or creature based, but I don't know. Over the last decade, horror seems to have gone anywhere it wants and gotten away. Like It Follows is a very simple film, and it's done. I don't. There's no rules to horror. I love it because it's completely free, and you can ride within the lines or outside of the lines, because the lines don't really exist to us. I don't know. It's not. If I fully understood it, I might be able to explain it, but I try not to overthink it. I just do what I do, and and see how people enjoy it or dislike it. That's.
Well, you know what? we could always classify it. I mean, so many subgenres, but the one thing that we do know is that horror fans are the most loyal fans, and
But
the
they're also some of the most knowledgeable. I mean, horror fans know cinema history. They know mainstream cinema history, but they also know like deep cuts and like B movies, and they understand movies better than most fans, I think. And I think they watch movies because they might call themselves horror fans, but I think they're more cinephiles who lean towards horror films because they understand references. They know they can connect things really quickly, and know where you got your inspiration or ripped something off, depending on how close it is or how much they've liked it or not. So, I mean, that's kind of fun. It's fun to have an audience that engages with you. And you see it too with even like the interviews that you get are it's all about technique and the movie. Whereas if you go into mainstream, it's about celebrity, and that's a totally different thing. It has nothing to do with movies, really.
Mm,
Celebrity is just a tool to sell movies.
yeah.
So it's a good place to be, I think, because the audience tells you pretty quickly whether your film is shit or not.
we we shall see. I mean, after all, you have all the components of a horror movie in
Yeah.
this. So
Oh no, it's definitely. I mean, the understanding of horror movies. I think we still live in this world that grew up in Blockbuster, and when you were a Blockbuster, these categories really mattered because you would wander down hallways for horror, comedy, sci-fi, and films fit a very, you know, there's very few films that could go outside of the box, and it was a problem for marketing. That now with Netflix and Amazon and Hulu and all these places, it doesn't matter. It's all just digital categories that overlap. And really every time I'm on Netflix, it feels like they have 10 movies because it's the same movies in every horror sci-fi thing, and it's all the same movies that are like repeated over and over. And I'm thinking like, as much as I hated the categorization, it clarified a lot because I knew if I wanted to watch an action, I'd get an action. If I want to watch a horror, I get a horror. But like this, it's just they'll put anything in any category just to feed some algorithm demon that they're a slave to, as far as I can tell. So I don't know. I mean, movies are movies, and I think there's good movies and bad movies, whether they're horrors or comedies or whatever, is kind of irrelevant um, in a lot of ways to me. I
uh,
don't. I really. It isn't really something I spend a lot of time thinking about when I'm making the movie.
it is all about the algorithm. Well,
Yeah.
John, I've taken a lot of your time already, but could you tell us what's up next for you? What
Begging.
horrific project you're coming up?
A lot of begging and groveling for money to make my next movie. I mean, I'm working on a film called She Came Knocking. We're at the stage where we're trying to attach a name that will bring us financing. Um, that is a horror thriller. It's got all the ingredients it's got, that you would need to call it a horror thriller. I'm also working on an action thriller that, I mean, everything I do has got a good blood gag somewhere in it, and that one certainly does. It's got two actually. And then I've got a couple of smaller movies that I'd love to make if I can find the right people to finance them, which is always kind of the hard part because winning lottery tickets don't come my way ever. Um, so yeah, I mean, it's they all play in genre. I'm either in action thriller or horror thriller, is with a little bit of comedy thrown in. Seems to be my world.
I know, and not to spoil anything, there was a really funny comedy scene in your film, so that
Yeah, I mean,
regarding
I like to blend the comedy with the horror, and I like to make people feel awkward and uncomfortable. And that's kind of the most fun part about Do Not Disturb is sitting in a theater and watching people groan and whinge and wince. So
well, John, thank you very much for carrying this conversation with us. You know, horror aficionados will like your film. I mean, either that or I'll make them hungry right afterwards. So
no,
we'll
I think the reviews and the festivals have a good enough percentage of people are going to enjoy the film.
Both excellent. Well, John, let's do this again. Hopefully
Yeah,
on
for
your
sure.
next horror project. Thank you very
Awesome.
much.
Thank you. Thanks for talking.